Okay, day 33, and the Israelis have a lot of success on the ground. Their advance is exceptional. It's far better than any expert has anticipated so far, and they've been totally efficient to the point of just shock, because this is the most complex urban warfare scenario we've ever seen, considering the hostages, the IEDs, the tunnels, but they've carved up North Gaza like it was butter. But they're still faced with 3 problems, which I will cover in this video. And these are major problems that cannot be overlooked. But before we do that, here's a quick recap of what's going on right now on the ground before we go to the problems and all the stuff. So number 1, the IDF has released that 34 soldiers have been killed so far in the Gaza operations since they started, 15 of which died in one day on October 31st on that ambush on that armed carrier. Now, the IDF is moving towards Gaza City, and they're actually moving towards the center of the city already. They've taken the west side, they've taken the north side, and they're closing in on Gaza Center. We'll talk about that in a second. The southern part of Gaza City have been completely conquered by the IDF. It's more rural, so it took a little bit faster. The north side of Gaza City is more residential, so it's going to take slower. The progress is going to be slower, but they're almost there. Now, everybody knows the main headquarters of Hamas in the north of Gaza is located inside Shifa Hospital, which is a complexity of its own, which we will cover in just a second. The one thing that IDF did last night, they've actually found secondary HQ of the Hamas North, which is the university. Inside the university, they found lots of intel, lots of RPGs, lots of soldiers that got basically eliminated, and it was a huge operational success. They taking out a big piece of the board of Hamas. The university was a major stronghold. Now, it seems that we understand really that the Hamas strategy at this point is going to be very, very simple. They're going to go through the same play. They have one playbook and one play in that playbook, which is climb from a hole with an RPG or the local equivalent of an RPG, try to take out a tank or a bulldozer, and then climb back in the hole, hoping to stay alive. Now, this is their go-to play. They're going to keep doing it again and again. Now, the problem with this play, even though it will generate a lot of GoPro footage, which we've already kind of seen, is that number 1, this is not winnable. You cannot win a war like this. This is not strategic. You simply cannot take enough of these tanks out like that. Specifically talking about the Israeli Merkava Mark IV tank, which can literally take about 6 to 7 of these RPGs easy, like it was nothing. Not to mention the D9 bulldozers that literally don't feel these RPGs. So the RPGs and the IEDs, the Israeli armor is strategically built for this. So they can take multiple RPG shots and nothing will happen to them. Obviously, some tanks get destroyed, and we've seen that happen. But the vast majority of the tanks basically is unaffected by this. It looks nice, it makes a lot of noise, but as you've seen, the speed of advance of the IDF has been stellar because this strategy against the Israeli armor that was built for this war is just simply ineffective, especially since the Israelis have complete air superiority and ocean superiority, and they have eyes on every single building. And of course, we also had the humanitarian daily corridor. As the IDF promised, it happens today as well. The daily 4-hour corridor is open for civilians to move south. And again, today we've seen more civilians kind of evacuate south with IDF protection from Hamas. And we also seen some footage released by the IDF showing the intensity of the battles as well as the cooperation between the ground and the air forces of the IDF. We've seen a bunch of Israeli soldiers push on, then a bunch of Hamas terrorists basically take defensive positions on top of a rooftop, and then the Air Force basically taking them out like it was nothing. So the cooperation level within a few hundred feet was absolutely insane. For an Air Force to operate in this kind of precision, it's absolutely unprecedented. It was very, very impressive. The footage is for you to judge. But let's talk about what happens next. So phase 1, as defined by the IDF, is grab the north of Gaza. Eliminate the Hamas control from the north of Gaza as it's carved out from the south. They're almost there. They need to grab the center of Gaza City and Shifa Hospital. Once they do it, stage 2 would be to completely clean up the north. There's still a lot of booby traps, a lot of IEDs, a lot of crap, a lot of potential ambushes on that land that they're holding. They'll have to go one by one and clear it all up. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, what happens next is the big problem I mentioned in the beginning of the video. In fact, there's 2 problems. As I mentioned in the start of the video, the success of the IDF so far has been stellar. But I mentioned there's 3 problems, 2 on the ground and 1 on the geopolitical front. So the 2 problems on the ground start now. Now, as the IDF closes on the center of Gaza, now they have 2 problems to complete stage 1. Stage 1 means clear the entire North Gaza from Hamas. Take over the center, take over Shifa Hospital. For them to do that, they have to do two things right now. Number one is clear all this land they've grabbed from booby traps, from IEDs, and from tunnel entrances and exits. They haven't done it 100% yet. It's going to take weeks and probably even months to clear North Gaza, even though they already conquered it from all the potential boo-boos that come out and bite them in the ass. So this is going to take weeks and months, and it's going to require a lot of attention and will cause casualties. Number two, Shifa Hospital is well known to be one of the headquarters of Hamas, which makes it a valid target from an international law perspective for the Israelis to just bomb. They can legally do it, but they've chosen not to do so, at least so far, because they're saying to themselves, look, while this is legal and we can do it, should we do it? We may be right to do it, but we're not going to be smart if we do it, because if we bomb a hospital, the PR damage may actually cause the United States to pull back its support and stop this war. So the Israelis are saying, look, we may be just at bombing the hospital, but we simply cannot from a PR perspective. So we're going to have to go in and clear it room by room by room, which means that the Israelis will be sacrificing soldiers' lives to save the civilians that are basically parked around Gaza and parked around that hospital. Some of them, if not most, are forced to stay there by Hamas. Now, these two problems are going to cause time and waste of soldiers' lives, because clearing all this land, clearing the Shifa hospital room by room, it's going to take a lot of time, weeks and weeks and weeks, and also it will cost more casualties on the IDF side. But I have no doubt they'll manage to do so. But it's not going to take days like it's taken so far. The pace from this point on is going to be much, much, much slower. So get used to the pace of this not being as fast. So stage number 3 will be to go and clean up the South Gaza, which is less impacted by Hamas. There's just less Hamas militants in the south, but still there, to clean it up. That's going to be phase 3. And then the Israelis will run into their third problem, because I mentioned there's 3 problems. 2 we just mentioned, clean up the land they hold, and basically clean up Shifa Hospital. But problem number 3 will start the minute they finish phase 3, which is take Gaza, carve it up, clean it up. Okay, what's next? This is where the Israelis will have a big, big problem, and I'll talk about it. Now, Biden and his team are pushing for a Palestinian state, a 2-state solution. That's their kind of vision for the day after. The Israelis are saying, look, that's all fine and dandy, but we're going to stay there indefinitely from a security perspective. We're not going to allow Gaza to rearm itself and go kill civilians again. We will always hold the ability to go in there and clean up hornets' nests if we need it. If there's terrorists, if there's weaponry, we will always reserve the right to go back in. But what everybody agrees right now on, which is the US and Israel, is that the Palestinians will have to self-govern. The Israelis are not interested in managing the sewage, the schools, and the transportation. The Palestinians will have to have a government, a self-government, to run the administration of Gaza. But it will not be able to have any sort of weaponry. The Israelis will have to maintain overall overarching security on top of that. And also, there will have to be a major overhaul, a major reform in the local education system, because so far, they've basically been teaching kids math. Hey, 2 dead Jews plus another 2 dead Jews. How many dead Jews? 4 dead Jews. Okay, good. Just giving you kind of a morbid example, but the idea here is that they need to overhaul the entire educational system there, because they've been indoctrinating kids into hatred and terrorism. So that's going to take a long time to change. This is the overall kind of ideas. How to get to the point where the Palestinians self-govern, the security is managed by Israel, and the education system is absolutely reformed so we don't have a new generation of terrorists. This is where things will get a little bit messy for Israel. While the Israelis want to have an overarching security on top of Gaza with a US/EU police force, the agreement from the Israeli side would be to create some sort of a technical government that will govern the daily stuff, and US/EU police force and Israel on top as the guys in charge from a security perspective. They do not want the Palestinian Authority imported from the West Bank into Gaza. That's a big, big red flag for the Israelis, because they've tried it before. They literally tried it in 2005, and they got Hamas, and they've got this. So they're not interested in the Palestinian Authority. It's basically Hamas 2.0 for Israel. On the other hand, we have the interests of the Biden administration, which are completely different from the Israeli perspective, because they're saying, look, this is an election year. We want quiet, and we want this thing to end right now at any cost, because this is costing us votes. The quickest solution to this is import the Palestinian Authority into Gaza, make this thing go away because we're going to lose the election because this thing is bleeding us. Because the concept right now is kill this conflict before we go to elections. Occupation by Israel is bad PR. We don't want this. So let's just give the Palestinian Authority a do-over again over Gaza. This is going to be a huge trap for the Israelis if they fall into this. Now, I don't know if they will or won't, but this is not the optimal solution for anybody. This is a very short-sighted solution, and I hope that this isn't the case. Because what's happening on top of this is the Palestinian Authority is going like this and saying, this is very interesting. So we already know that the Palestinian Authority has been making conditions to Blinken about what would it take for them to take Gaza again. So the Palestinians are basically saying, the Palestinian Authority is saying, well, look, we're going to let the Israelis get rid of our biggest enemy, which is the Hamas, and then we're going to make conditions. And the conditions they've made to Blinken is like, we'll go back to Gaza if we don't look like stooges. Because if we go back as an Israeli kind of stooge right after they just pummeled Hamas, we're never going to get legitimacy. So you can't put us in this situation, Mr. Blinken. You have to show that we brought some achievements. Otherwise, we're not going to be legitimate in Gaza. So the achievements we need to show to the Palestinian people to be able to actually rule it is a two-state solution in the 1967 borders with Jerusalem as the capital or East Jerusalem as the capital and territorial passage between Gaza and the West Bank, which is absolute no-no for Israel. So there's going to be a huge conflict coming up as the war is over. And the question is, how strong will the Israelis be in pushing their agenda versus what the wet dream of the Palestinians is create a two-state solution out of this and basically take lots of political achievements. So the question here is, will Israel be able to push its agenda, or the Palestinian Authority will ride the desire of the Biden administration to finish this quickly? That's the big turnoff that's going to happen here, and we'll see how this plays out. But this has been just a quick recap of what's going on day 33, the far, far future and a few months away. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one.